Welcome back to Sailing El Jaleo. In this week's video, we are still quads or cruisers living on dirt, unfortunately, but we do have an exciting update. My mom has finally returned from Wisconsin, and I was able to make it over to El Jaleo today to begin work on our upgrades so we can leave in the beginning of October. We're getting super stoked. Hey y'all, this week's video is going to be very straightforward. On Tuesday night I picked up my mom from the airport. On Wednesday I was able to make it over to El Jaleo to begin work. And today is Thursday, the 1st of September when I'm recording this. And this morning we had to take Hanwi to the vet. So we got all that taken care of. And hopefully I'll be able to get back to El Jaleo tomorrow to continue working. Since we are leaving in about 4 weeks, I'm trying to do the projects in order of necessity. So first I wanted to start by prepping the bottom so we can get El Jaleo back in the water. El Jaleo has an ablative bottom paint, and an ablative paint is designed to wear off gradually. So it's kind of like painting on a wet chalk, and the chalk dries and then it just kind of chalks off as you move. But it does require motion for the chalk or the ablative paint to actually come off and work properly. We were stationary in Belhaven for about 4 months over the winter last winter. So the bottom paint didn't really work as well as it should have, but that's not a failing of the paint. That's just because we weren't moving. So the first project here was just to get the bottom prepared so I could apply a new coat of bottom paint. And the first thing I had to do was to scrape off all of the barnacles. The ablative bottom paint is red in color, obviously, and you can see certain places where there is a blue color showing through. And the base coat on the bottom of the boat is blue, and that allows us to see when the ablative paint has worn all the way down to the base coat. In those areas, I'm going to try and remove all of the loose stuff. It can kind of chip away the ablative paint. So I'm going to try and get rid of all of that loose material, and then I'm going to spot paint over those areas with a few coats of ablative bottom paint, and then I'm going to put a fresh coat on the entire bottom. When El Jaleo was removed from the water in Delaware City, her bottom was power washed, and that took care of most of the barnacles. But there were still a few left. So once I got all of the barnacles off, the next job was to remove any remaining mud. Most of the mud had been removed during the power wash, but there were certain areas, especially where the lift straps were for the travel lift. Those areas were quite muddy, and there was some scattered mud throughout the entire thing. So I did an entire bottom scrub on El Jaleo. When scrubbing a bottom that has ablative paint, you have to be a little bit careful. You want to scrub hard enough to get all of the mud and debris off, but you don't want to scrub too hard to take off the ablative paint, which does wear off as it's designed to do. The paint that I'm using is Petit HRT Neptune. It is a water-based anti-fouling ablative bottom paint, and it does cost around $140 a gallon, and it takes about 1 gallon to do one entire coat on the bottom of El Jaleo. So you don't want to scrub too much of that off, as it is kind of expensive. Before El Jaleo can be put back in the water, the boot top also needs to be repainted. The boot top is the thin strip of paint right at the transition between the bottom paint and the topside paint. It's about 2 inches wide, and you can see where the cream color of the gel coat is starting to wear through where the boot top is chipping away. I've got all of the paint and everything I need to repaint that, and I hope to do that at the same time as the bottom paint. And the final project that I want to get done before we go back in the water is to get the rub rails repainted. The rub rails are located about halfway up from the top side. You can see them in some of the shots, and it's a strip of wood that runs along the entire side of the boat, almost the entire side, and it's got a thin metal cap on it, so that's when you go to dock. If you bang into anything, there's some protection there for the side of the boat. By no means am I a physically strong person, and this was about an hour and a half of solid scrubbing. By the time I got done, my arms were dead, and I was fading quite a bit towards the end there. But we got her done, and she looked great. After a day and a half of drying, it'll be ready to go for the bottom paint. And a quick update on the new crew. This morning I took Hanwi to the vet, and she does have 2 retained baby teeth. That's why I took her. I was pretty concerned about it. I don't know that much about canine teeth, but the big pointy ones in the front, I think they're canines. Her baby tooth for the big pointy one on the top and the bottom on the driver's side of her mouth was retained. So there are 2 teeth on both the top and the bottom trying to occupy the same space. And that can be a problem, obviously. It can change the direction that the adult teeth grow in, and it can actually cause the bottom canine to puncture the roof of the mouth and create an abscess in the roof of the mouth. So she's 7.5 months old now, so obviously they're not going to fall out on their own, so they are going to have to be surgically removed. And I know I talked, I think it was last week, about her getting spayed, and in order to remove the teeth, they have to put her under. And even though I have concerns about her joint issues, there are dangers with anesthesia in dogs, especially as small as her. She's only around 9 pounds. So I've decided to risk the hip issues or the joint issues and go ahead and get her spayed now, since she has to be put under. So it's just been kind of a roller coaster of different things. And statistically, I'm sure she'll be fine. The vet wasn't overly concerned about the joint issues. The problem with Alaskan Klikais is they're such a new breed, there's not a whole lot of data on them. And this was actually the first, Hanwi was the first Klikai that this vet had ever seen. So they are kind of a rarer breed. I don't know, if you guys don't know much about them, they're a newer breed that was bred actually in the mid 1980s. And I'm having a brain fart. I can't remember the girl's name that bred them. But up in Alaska, she crossbred Huskies with another Spitz breed dog. And she selected for size. I believe it took her around 25 years. And I may be butchering the details, but I believe it took her around 25 years to breed down the size of Huskies into Alaskan Klikais. And so they are a relatively new breed. They've only been around in existence for about 35 years, and they're getting more popular now, but especially in the last, in the first 20 years, I believe there were less than 1,000 of them in the world, but now they're starting to take off, so hopefully we can get some more of that historical data on joint issues and that kind of stuff for this specific breed. So that was probably way more than you wanted to know, but there you go. I would like to give a massive shout out to our Patreon crew, Joan and Juddy Judnick, Val and Chris Alcorn, Denise and Eli Sackett, Joan and Jim Limbo, Sherry Erickson, Genesis Ava Limbo, and Deb Shaw. Without you guys, these videos wouldn't be possible. I doubt if I'd even bother making them. So thank you guys. Your support really means a lot. And if you're interested in becoming a member of our Patreon crew, for additional information and to help support the channel, there is a link in the description below. You can just follow that link and sign up if you want to. If you do enjoy our content, please like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps us out with exposure, so I really appreciate that. And I hope you all have a great week. I'll see you next week.